Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am very excited today to talk to Dr. Michael Pham. Michael is a pediatrician living and working in Saipan in the Mariana Islands, which are not far from Guam in the Western Pacific Ocean. It's about a 2-hour day trip from Philadelphia. I don't think you could have actually moved any further away, Michael. And I've been looking so forward to talking to you for a while now. You are an unapologetically authentic person who also lives with tremendous humility. You have a deep love of adventure and an avid intellectual curiosity about the world around you. Your journey has taken you from rural Georgia to refugee camps at our southern border, and now to a very, very remote island. I'll admit that I had absolutely no idea where Saipan was when you told me that you were moving there. But, Michael, many young people are told that their life must follow a carefully prescribed path. And certainly in medicine, there are implicit and explicit expectations of a young doctor's career. You have rebuked all of these in many ways in the pursuit of just a rich and stimulating life. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat today, Michael. I'm looking so forward to it.
Oh my goodness. When you first told me that you wanted to interview me, I was thinking to myself, doggone it, am I that interesting? I didn't think that was as interesting. All this is just happenstance, and I just happened to be here. But on both hands open, I'm quite honored that you decided that you wanted to peruse this little hollow shell of a brain of mine. So I'm honored to be here.
Well, thanks for joining, Michael. I know the time difference can make it tough, so thanks for coordinating.
For reference, it is 10 a.m. here in Saipan, and it is
7:15 in Philadelphia.
There you go.
On Saturday, and it's Sunday.
On Saturday, and it's Sunday here.
Yeah. So tell me, Michael, your story begins in rural Georgia via Vietnam.
Well, I mean, it depends who you ask. The family line story starts in Vietnam, and my family, our lineage is about of refugees, effectively. My grandparents were refugees from the north when the communists took over. My grandparents were refugees up in the north, went down to the south, had my parents in the south, and then when the communists took over the south, we were refugees from South Vietnam to America. Initially, the folks got settled, ironic of places. My mom got settled in Philadelphia initially, and then I ended up moseying her way down to Louisiana, and then my dad met her in Louisiana while he was working in the shipyards. And it's kind of an odd place when you think about, how my family ended up in Georgia, but my dad worked his way through college, had the grand notion that maybe he should try to go to medical school, got into medical school, matched to a residency in Macon, Georgia, and decided Macon was the perfect place to be for, Asian people, because we would be like all 3.5 population at that time. And so we just decided to stay around Macon, and that's where I was born, where my 4 siblings were born. And then at some point in time in childhood, my dad decided, you know what? Macon is too city-like for me. I don't like Macon anymore. Let's go buy a drug dealer's home in the middle of the woods, that 37 acres that the U.S. Marshals decided to seize, and bid an auction and get in there and move my entire family in the middle of nowhere. And so I grew up literally in the middle of the woods in Monroe County, Georgia. And it was, that's the childhood in a nutshell.
And so you went to public schools?
I'm a product of the public education. There were too many of us kids. Even if they wanted to send us to Catholic school, they could not afford to. Now, in my situation, I'm unique because I actually did have 1 year of private school, because I had, honestly, I'm probably autistic, and so I was incredibly delayed in my childhood. And my parents were under the impression that a private school was going to treat me with a little more attention. And they were sorely disappointed after the first year. And so they put me into public school, and I'm a public school person since.
Wow.
All the way to medical school.
And so you grew up in a forest?
I grew up in the woods, yeah. 37 acres between a cow pasture and a cemetery.
Wow. And I imagine you must have been the only Vietnamese family for quite some distance.
Oh my gosh, yes we were. But there was, when we moved in, a nail salon, and next to the Walmart, And so we assumed that they were Vietnamese, but they never made contact with us. But then down the road, like 10 years after we had moved down there, a Vietnamese family had bought a chicken farm. And so we were no longer the only Vietnamese family on the road. There are now a grand total of 2 Vietnamese people in that stretch of road. And this road is like 14 miles long. So, we're on the up and up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember you telling me a story once of how very well-meaning neighbors brought you roadkill that they had found, assuming
Yeah, they did.
that was commonly gifted and consumed in your culture.
Look, I would like to put it out there that not everyone eats dog, and coyote does not count as a dog. And we did not enjoy eating that, but if we did not, then first off, the generosity would have been for nothing, and that animal would have died for nothing. And so it's our family's philosophy: if you kill something, you need to pay respect to that animal and eat it. And so this animal was not necessarily roadkill, but this animal was basically shot as a varmint on the chicken farm. And so they gave it to us out of the goodness of their heart because they didn't know any better. And so we did what we could. We skinned it, we pelted it, and we saved the skull and took up whatever meat we got. And it was the worst meat I've ever had in my entire life. But it is, yeah. It's interesting how perceptions of the South are. You have all the stereotypes, and to some degree they're true. But one stereotype that's also very true is the fact that these people, for the most part, are very generous in their own little misguided little ways. And so, we had to be grateful for the fact that, contrary to popular belief, I didn't wake up with a burning cross in my yard every single day, and that people were very kind to us for being outsiders, that they invited us to their lives, their churches, their homes. And so that's just, part of the experience.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. What was it like for your parents? Because they weren't from rural Vietnam, or were they?
My mom was a fisherman's daughter in the southeast, so she's a rural person, but
Okay.
she's probably more city than my dad. My dad was raised in Saigon, so the former Vietnamese capital, and so he was a city person, but he resented the city. He hated it so much, and so that's why he moved us out in the middle of the woods. Now, I asked my mom and dad, first off, what among their gestalt that they thought that moving, to very culturally very Asian people, they're still very Asian people today, to the middle of the deep South and just staying put. We could have gone to Orlando, where my aunt was. We could have gone to New Orleans, where my dad's family was. We could have gone to Texas, where there was at least, a Vietnamese grocery store. But no, we decided to stay in the middle of nowhere. And, I think more than anything, my dad, and you can probably see it a little bit in me, we value independence. Right.
Yes.
And so there's a certain pride in being able to say, I've done it myself. I did it my own way. And I relied on nobody. And so in some sense, that's probably the underlying thought of it all. That and freedom, because, you really can't burn a couch in your yard in an HOA neighborhood, which, we probably totally can.
Can you burn a couch in your yard in Saipan?
I haven't asked, but I bet I could, because I've seen some things.
So, Michael, tell me, what was your childhood like growing up in the woods?
Well, I think childhood for me probably was a little bit different, even among my siblings, because we had such different personalities.
Sure.
I think, at some point, initially, I bet we were probably lonely, because we were used to living in a neighborhood and then having the capacity of seeing other kids, and then all that was gone within 24 hours of us stepping foot into that house. And I remember during the summer breaks, those were particularly challenging times, because there were like maybe 1 or 2 week periods where we didn't see any other kids other than us siblings. And so what we developed in that response is a very strong family bond. My best friends are my siblings. The only friends I really keep in contact regularly, like with incredible frequency, are probably my family members.
Yeah.
They're not perfect, but they are, my own. And I'm not perfect. They know my faults. I know their faults. We all know how to support each other, what we need, and we also know when to call each other's crap out. And so that just as you can imagine, 5 kids in the middle of the woods with a lot of energy. that probably drove my mom nuts because there was so much sibling tension. Because if there was drama, there was no way that you could run away from it. You couldn't go to your neighborhood kid's house. You couldn't get, well, I actually ran into the woods, but you still have to come back home, right? And to eat dinner and sleep. And so I think from that standpoint, from a social standpoint, it was in some sense very isolating and also very intimate at the same time.
Sure.
From a fun standpoint, boy, I had a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a guy, so things that I do is get out there and get rugged and dirty. We dug holes. I had a acre garden which I managed myself. I took care of the fruit orchard. We worked a lot. My dad made it very clear that we were never too high and mighty to do labor and work with our hands. And so I hauled gravel, I chopped down trees, I re-blacktop the roads. I did everything. It was an incredible, and we built sheds, we fixed boats, fixed cars. It was a very hands-on childhood.
Yeah, I think your dad is still digging wells today, right? In his 60s.
Don't even bring that up. That well has given me such a headache. Did I tell you it broke down again? But anyway, whatever. It's fixed. It's done.
So your dad worked in a small community hospital as an emergency medicine doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And what was his job like? What was your first exposure to medicine? Did you go to the hospital with him, or?
Actually, it was so cool. Back when I was little, my dad actually probably broke hospital policy, but he was the medical director, so he could do whatever the hell he wanted. So he actually every once in a while, when we were still young, he would invite us to hospital sleepovers. And so what it means is that he would take us to his night shift. He would drop us off in the call room, and he would do a shift. And every once in a while, when he sees something interesting, like an X-ray that has something interesting, a CT that has something interesting, some basic things like that, he would wake me up and say, "Hey, Michael, take a look at this." Wow. And he did this for me. I think he did it for my older brother, and he also did it for my younger brother as well. But after a while, he just said, "No, medicine is terrible. Don't do this to your kids," and that stopped. But I think when you think about where we were at the time it was very remarkable that basically a first generation Asian person who has a very heavy accent, who had to script and scram all the way up the medical ladder, who, to be frank, there was still a fair amount of anti-Vietnamese sentiment just because of the Vietnam War was fresh in a lot of people's memories. He garnered the respect of the community by being a good doctor. And when he retired last year, people cried over it because they appreciated what he did. I didn't really see him much in the ER, but what I did see for him was despite it being in the middle of nowhere, we actually had a sizable Vietnamese community about 2 counties south of us in Houston County, associated with the Air Force Base. Okay. And he was basically the de facto primary care provider for a lot of the older folks who really had barriers to the healthcare system. If there was an issue, he would write medicines for it. If there was a CT scan or an echo or that needs interpreting, he would advise them. And so honestly, that was my first taste of medicine. It was basically him being the community doctor for our extended family across 60 miles from our house. And that was just, to me, what really honestly inspired me to go to medicine.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you know from an early age that you would follow in his footsteps?
Yes and no. I kind of had a gumption, but I have ADD, so my thought process was like everywhere. At one point in time, I thought I was going to be a farmer, a fisherman, a marine biologist, a priest, yada yada yada. And so there was a lot of breadth of interest for me. And to my parents' credit, they did not force me to become a doctor. In fact, my dad tried to talk me out of it, to be frank.
Because of the lifestyle, or because
the lifestyle, you and I both know we sacrifice our 20s to do what we do, and you're still sacrificing your life now, right? and I, to some degree, when we graduate from fellowship and residency or whatever, we'll give ourselves a little bit every single day. That sacrifice never truly goes away. You and I can never have a normal life. That's just the reality of what medicine is. But I think he saw what the potential was and how sensitive of a kid I was, and realized how important it was to have some sort of balance of life. And he just didn't wish that for me. So I think, that in itself takes a lot of humility and a great amount of just self-awareness, and I have to give it to my dad.
Yeah, of course, of course. And so you decided around college time that you would go to medical school? Is that the?
That's pretty much it. I went to college. I said, I'll become a chemistry major because I got nothing else better to do. Realized I had no idea what was going on. I was making A's in the classes. I don't know about theoretical equations. I don't know what this electron is. And the Heisenberg principle, who knows? and so I said, you know what? I could make a job. I could get this for a living, but I wouldn't understand what I'm doing this. And it honestly lacks the human component that I so desperately wanted in my life. And so I stepped away and decided to go medicine, and then that's just how it was.
Sure. So was college your first time out of the woods, so to speak?
As independent, yeah,
As independent.
independently. That was really probably not necessarily the person. Obviously, went to bigger towns, went to New Orleans, but first time I lived in the big town of Athens, Georgia. Um, first time I had to use public transportation.
Yeah.
First time, I adopted my crazy amount of walking capacity to get from point A to point B. Yeah, that was the first time.
For people who don't know, you routinely will walk 20 miles a day for
Yeah.
for no apparent reason.
No, there's a reason for that. There's usually like a piece of fried chicken or a cheesesteak afterwards. I'm not a barbarian.
Fair enough. Was it hard for you to live in a city after a childhood spent a very idyllic childhood in the woods?
I'm gonna say yes and no. In the sense that I'm an incredibly adaptive person, obviously, right? So the city life really wasn't that big of a thing. I think honestly, the thing that jarred me the most was how distant some people were, and I didn't
How
have my
distant?
distant some people
Oh,
were.
sorry.
Yeah, there wasn't that warmth
Yeah.
of small town living, right? You may know 1,000 different people, and not a single one of them wants to really truly get to know you. And so, not having that fallback with my siblings and my family, that was probably the most jarring part about going to college.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then med school was in Virginia, right?
Augusta, Georgia, baby.
Oh, Augusta, Georgia, that's right.
This Augusta, Georgia, the Masters.
And then when did you decide on becoming a pediatrician?
I, we talked about this before, in my life stages and all. I knew that that very likely that a family life wasn't going to be possible for me. And so in some ways, I decided to go into pediatrics because if I wasn't going to have any children of my own, I would definitely like to see children regularly and be an advocate for them in one way or the other. And so that's why I decided to go into pediatrics. Almost like a gut wrench, reaction.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
No, I love peds. It's an amazing field. And then tell me a little bit more about your decision or your journey since finishing residency. You came to Philadelphia. You were at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
Yep.
Philadelphia did not agree with you as a city.
Not initially, not at all. Philadelphia, first off, is my first official time living above the Mason-Dixon line, and boy howdy, that was.
In what way? People are ruder. The culture.
People are a little bit more upfront about things. I got a couple death threats within the first week of me being there on my bike. And honestly, that set the tone. Set the tone for Philadelphia for the first couple of months. And it was by divine grace I met you and our extended friend group, and that honestly made Philadelphia home. Yeah. And when I was leaving Philadelphia, honestly, I got really emotional about it because city life or not, I had a lot of treasured memories there and a lot of involved, with the wonderful people I met. So thank y'all for that.
Of course. No, we miss you very dearly. But, when you love people, you have to let them go. And so we have let you go now to.
I think you let me go too far. You should have pulled the line back just a little. Tampa, Florida, maybe.
Well, the truth is, Michael, you wouldn't have listened. So
yeah, you're right.
But it's so exciting to hear about what you're up to so far away from home. Tell me about Saipan. I had no idea where this island was before you
Okay,
declared that you
so
were going to move there.
yeah, so Saipan, the long and short of it, Saipan is a U.S. Commonwealth. It's not a state. It's kind of like Puerto Rico in that regard. It has certain liberties involved with being U.S. territory, but not complete full activity. Right? They don't have electoral votes. People here are citizens, but citizens. I call it citizens light because it's not really. It's not really. This is not. Saipan is effectively either benignly neglected or malignantly neglected by the federal government, depending on who you ask.
Sure.
And so Saipan is a part of an island chain that includes Guam. Guam is its own little entity, but Saipan is a smaller island, much smaller. It's only 25 square miles or so. Has a population of less than 50,000. Natives here are usually Chamorro Islanders or Carolinian Islanders. Other demographics include a very substantial Filipino population.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would say about third of the island is Islanders. The other third is Filipino, and then the other third is Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Pan-Asian, plus or minus a couple white and black people.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
How close are you to the Philippines?
We're very close. We're only 3 hours away, but there's no direct flight from here to the Philippines.
Really?
There's none. I think the problem is that the plane that they would need to get to the Philippines is way too big for the landing strip here.
I see.
Yeah.
So where can you fly to from Saipan? You can fly
to 3 wonderful locations. You can go to scenic Pham, or test your Korea K-pop in Korea, or tell the Japanese they never said sorry in Tokyo.
So those are the 3 places you can fly to.
Those are the 3 places. There's usually daily flights. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, you also have the option to go to scenic Rota, which is a small island. You can also go to scenic Tinian, which is also a small island.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never heard these names before.
Yeah, I know, right? Neither did I. And then I came here and said, oh, that's a thing. This is what you guys do for fun. They choose to other smaller islands. All right.
So tell me, in many ways, you have returned to the island analog of a house in the woods.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about adjusting to island life.
I just kind of leaned on my redneck bone. I mean, I'll tell you what. You can't see it, but I have a machete in the cabinet over there to chop down coconuts and banana trees.
Just coming back to your roots.
Going back to my roots. I'm just fully integrated.
Yeah.
But then it's only been a month, so you talk to me now. Imagine how I'm going to be in like another 10 months. How local I'm going to be.
It's going to be a whole machete collection.
Well, not machete. Yeah, maybe machete collection. But my goal by the end of the time I leave here is I'm going to learn how to climb a coconut tree.
I have no doubt that you'll do that very
I'll do
easily.
it. Maybe break my neck in the process, but it'll be fun.
You're working in a municipal hospital?
Yeah, it's a municipal. If you call it a municipal hospital, it's a community hospital.
Okay.
But it has everything. It has a ICU. It has peds floor. It has a NICU. It has a nursery and surgery suites. All that. So it has everything. It just can't do everything if you get the drift.
Yeah. So Michael, I think you have such a unique perspective because you left one of the largest children's hospitals in the world. That has just about every resource at its disposal, for better or for worse. And now you're in a small community hospital on an island. Tell me a little bit about the practice of medicine out there and what has surprised you the most since moving there.
I think, one thing that I didn't really surprise me, but I kind of anticipated, but it's always kind of a jar, just trying to, when you assess it, it's the fact that in academic centers, you tend to have physicians that do a very narrow scope of practice, but they do that narrow scope of practice incredibly well.
Yeah.
Here in the community, you don't have that luxury to be that narrow. You have to do everything. So my background is effectively cardiology. So this is my mindset right here. I didn't look at neonates with TPN dependency that often. I didn't really do lumbar punctures that often. But all of a sudden, the moment you land here, you open your blinds from this to this. And so it becomes more broad. And I'm calling and I'm, looking at this, I'm digging deep into my medical school books, asking about endocrine disorders. Like, there's a cute little lady, a 12-year-old who has a history of irregular periods, and also when she does have periods, she would bleed for over a month. And so I said, that is not the heart. I cannot get an EKG on that. And so you really do have to be, and there's no one else, right? And so you can't call your handy dandy endocrinologist for a consult. So you have to really think on your feet and be the endocrinologist that you never wanted to be. So having said that, I've had a couple cases here already where there was very severely sick kids, and it's clear to me there's a very big difference between the comfort of what some folks are able to do here versus what I've been exposed to. I see a kid with a blood pressure of 60, I'm like, I can fix that. Just have calcium, just have a calcium at the bedside. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. And versus everyone else, because the problem is, you don't have that luxury for an escape route here. If there's a poor outcome here, you are the one pronouncing the child dead, and dealing with that difficult conversation. And so I think that with that mindset right there of being broad, and there are a lot more being on your shoulders, I think that people in academia, and you know this from the American Medical Association, how they disregard community physicians constantly. They don't regard community physicians as very much. But the reality is, in situations in particular like this, where the deficit for care and need is so wide, is that the job here is intense. The job here is every bit as respectable and complex as some of the biggest and best hospitals in the world. We have ventilated kids, we have kids on epinephrine, we have kids with cardiac dysfunction, we have kids that have big holes in their hearts, but there's no pop-up valve here. And so you have to make sure the kid is stable enough in order to get the kid safely, which is ultimately going to be a tertiary care center. But the buck stops with you, and that responsibility is more poignant here, if I had to say so.
Of course. So I think you told me just last week that you had a very sick kid, and you flew from Saipan to Japan to
Guam to Hawaii to Los Angeles to San Diego, all in between with very long ass layovers. It was not a great flight. I think total it was like 3 days of flying.
3 days of flying with a kid.
One way.
3 days of flying with a sick child who was who was deteriorating imminently.
Yeah. This kid's skin was as yellow as you can possibly imagine. And that old adage that everybody poops is not true.
Pediatric surgery joke. So, and you're the only physician on the plane.
As far as we know, we were the only physician, and certainly I was the only one that was part of the medical team. And this was not a medical flight by any accounts. This was economy class, United Airlines. And so you didn't have the capacity to do what you would think a normal medevac would be able to do. And so even the weirdest burp makes you on edge. I don't think I slept for 30 hours, during one of those stretches, because it was, the kid was just not looking great. not actively seeing Jesus, but maybe making a couple prayers to saints, and so there was periods where it became very, very real that I may have to do something, and I may not necessarily have the full deck of cards to me, and that's just the reality.
How does that make you view your own training in hindsight here in the U.S.?
I think it's great. Like I said, first off, all the pediatricians here I work with are absolutely wonderful. They are very well trained. But I think with a couple of folks, that comfortability with dealing with a sick kid, it's a little bit less second nature to them, right? For me, that was my job constantly, day in and day out for a year and a half.
You're in the cardiac ICU. Right?
And so I was like, blood pressure down. we'll be fine.
Right.
So there's always that, that belief where there's a certain amount of chi, right? There's active chi, there's passive chi, and then there's like neutral chi. And sometimes it's very beneficial to you not to do either active or defensive, but just to be patient. And I think that's one thing that my training has taught me, is just to try to keep a calm head and see where things go. And if things look bad, then you can jump on it and activate your other arsenals.
So, Michael, how many pediatricians are there on the island?
So let me check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think 6 pediatricians total. I mean, 6 or 7 pediatricians total, but only like 4 of us do inpatient work, and that includes myself.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 pediatricians do inpatient peds in Saipan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or is it 5? 4 or 5, one of those two. It's not a whole lot.
4 or 5. Wow.
Yeah.
And so anytime a child becomes acutely sick and has a viable chance at surviving, that child will be transported on a 3-day journey somewhere to an American West Coast hospital.
Yeah, and I wonder why it had to be so long, because the flight to Japan is only 3 hours away. You can make a 8-hour flight from Japan to San Diego. But now that I think about it, the reason why they stagger the flights that way is because it gives you bites, little small bites, 6 or 7 hour bites. And if the kid acutely decompensates, you can pop off and go to Hawaii and go to the Honolulu Regional Hospital if you need to, or you can pop up and settle the maybe in Guam or Los Angeles. If you go to Tokyo Narita and you end up on a 12-hour flight from Tokyo to San Diego, kid goes down. There's a kid going down for 12 hours straight until you get to the nearest airport. And
Actually,
so it makes more sense in that regard, that you have small bites.
Yeah, I was curious because I was thinking, why wouldn't you just treat in Japan and then move from there or something? But that makes
also suspect it's Medicaid. Japan probably doesn't take Saipan Medicaid, is my guess. Just a wild
wild guess. What would you say the culture is of medicine on the island? And how does it compare to the culture here?
So in the States, you and I both know this, there's a growing disregard or disrespect for doctors, both from the patient side and even your support staff, right? That does not happen here. Not to say that we're gods, but there is, picture medicine in the 1980s where people had acknowledged how much physicians go through to get where they are, and how much of their own personal life they're sacrificing in order to treat their loved ones. There's still that acknowledgement here, right? You're not going to get quite as a brazen insult to physicians as here. There's a healthy amount of respect for physicians here, despite our limited capacity, despite us not being able to do everything that we would like to do. There's still that respect because they acknowledge that there are sick people here. There are better places that we could be, but we definitely took a pay cut to be here, and so people here more than anything are appreciative.
Are most of the other physicians on the island natives or transplants like yourself?
I only know one native physician. Everyone else is either a long-term resident or a short-term contractor.
I see. Interesting. And then what about the dynamic within the medical team? Like, how is that different from here in the United States? Because there's a very rigid, unfortunately, a very rigid pecking order here, especially in academic medicine. What's it like over there?
I would say that order might be exaggerated to some degree here, right?
Oh, interesting.
At least between the nursing staff and myself, right? At least in my old institution, the places I've worked in the past, if the nurse thought that there could be something to improve an outcome, they will verbalize it. They will recommend it. They never do that here.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's all on you. And I think it's part of this cultural. I really wish it wasn't, because I really wish the nurses would take more an active role in patient care here. They do, but like advocating their own thoughts and speaking their own mind, because we're human. We can get tunnel vision, and so So, I'll give you an example, right? We had a old lady who passed out cold on the floor in the children's clinic, and we called her cold blue. Lady got back conscious, but we still put the EKG leads on her. It took us prompting the response team to say, put the EKG leads on her, to put the EKG leads on her. And then when the EKG leads weren't reading, I said, it is not reading. Can you adjust the stickers? And then when it was reading, the heart rate was like, 51 in a 60-year-old woman, which is not normal. And I said, this kid, is that wrong? It's reading 61, 51. Let's get her going. So people here have deference to the physician. So with that respect comes a lot more responsibility for you to become actively hands-on and micromanaging people here. But as far as the rigid order from staff and people above me, the medical director, I don't think people care. I do what I want.
Is there pressure? I guess it's not an academic center, so you're not privy to the discussion about RVUs and the finances of healthcare out there.
I think the general sentence here is that we're losing money. This hospital is not profitable by any means. It's here because the government helps subsidize it to a large degree, I believe. And so where billing is discussed, and you absolutely need to bill and make sure that the counters have an associated diagnosis and you write your notes up, it's not necessarily forefront for us to discuss, the finances, because the general accepted thing is that this hospital is losing money. There's no way that the local population is going to be able to support this hospital. And pediatrics in particular, kids in America, where Medicaid is a little bit more generous, almost every single pediatric wing is losing money. And so this is not really, a discussion for us. We need to do our responsibilities. We need to bill. We need to make sure that we can keep this hospital afloat the best we can, but this is clearly a subsidized project.
Sure. Do you feel like more of a doctor out there in terms of not having to feel, explain more about that.
So, with my roles anyway, between residency, fellowship, and the hospitalist position that I worked at, I was a doctor. I did make my decisions, but there's always someone above me, right? And so whenever I wanted to order something, I will always have to make sure that get in their headspace and figure, would they appreciate this? And when I'm here, I stop asking that. I have to ask the question, do I appreciate this? Will this bring value to this patient's care? And so in that sense, that paradigm completely shifts. It's no longer advocating for your attending, it's advocating for your patients.
I see. And in many ways, you're having to relearn all of that for the first time.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's completely foreign to you until this point.
Yeah. And like I said, trying to order a luteinizing hormone on a menstruating teenager, not my thing.
The cardiology fellowship didn't prepare you for that.
Not at all.
Tell me, what are some of the, if you could paint a picture of the Saipan pediatric population, what are some of how is it different from kids in America? What are some of the health needs out there? How is the clinical medicine kind of different by virtue of the population being different?
So one of the obvious things is this is a different environment, right? You have a different population in general. You have different people, background, family life in general. So as a result of that, some of the things that we do here aren't translatable to the States. Like we screen all our kids for tuberculosis at age 5.
Yeah.
No, and it's but everyone gets tested. That's endemic here. We refer a lot we do a lot more with TB as a result, because we have, latent TB and all that stuff here. So that part is interesting. Other things that we do more often than the States, for example, not all the piping here in Saipan is necessarily up to, and so it might be Flint grade piping system. And so we also screen for lead a lot more and things like that. And then things that we take for granted in the States, we have an incredibly low rate of rheumatic fever, so a lot less valvular disease. So because our strep surveillance is so intense in the States, and so to have someone with rheumatic fevers is very, very rare. It's not rare here. Everybody here has has or knows somebody with rheumatic heart valve disease. And
Really?
so it's interesting things, from it's not actually tropical medicine, because really rheumatic fever is not tropical medicine, but it is certain things are endemic here that aren't necessarily endemic to the States, just by nature of the way that people live here.
Is there the same burden of chronic disease among young kids that we exported a lot of our metabolic syndrome and stuff to Saipan?
Oh my gosh, so much spam. There's so much spam here. There's so much spam. My gosh. I mean, if you talk about processed foods, I mean, these folks eat processed foods like crazy. And it's like, okay, well, I appreciate that you like the high sodium content of processed meat, but your BMI is dirty.
So childhood obesity is a problem.
Childhood obesity is a problem. And my personal opinion is Saipan is not hot, but it is warm. And with that logic, people here don't necessarily do as much walking. Everyone here is very much car dependent.
I see.
And it's interesting to me because there's always, and this is what I wholeheartedly believe about certain ethnic groups, be it African Americans, Native Americans, Chamorro people, but your genetics dictate what you can eat to some degree safely, right?
Yeah.
For Asian people, look at me. I'm a Vietnamese person. My people have lived on pure rice granules, carbohydrates for the past 4,000 years, right? And I'm okay. I don't think the way that people process, particularly the natives, in areas where there have been a large history of food scarcity, stretching back millennia, process carbs the same way that you and I process carbs, because it shows on them.
Yeah.
They store fat in the most dangerous places. It's one thing if you have fat on your arms or whatever, but when you have centripetal fat, that's bad. When you have fat to the point where you have back pain because your memory tissue is so generous, that's also bad. But it also could be a survival instinct from thousands of years of natural selection. So our American diet on the Chamorro population, not good. They struggle with it for sure.
And I'm sorry, Chamorro is the indigenous population there?
Yeah, Polynesian people. They're the native
okay.
Polynesian. Yeah, they're the native Polynesian people to Guam and the Marianas Islands.
Okay, and their primary language is English?
Chamorro.
Chamorro. Okay.
Yeah, Chamorro speaking Chamorro, which, by the way, is also something kind of like Spanish.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because the Spanish colonized Guam for a little while, so there was a lot of intermixing of the languages. So mixing is a mix, mezcla, uno, dos, tres, buenas, all those things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So is a lot of your you divide your time between outpatient pediatrics and inpatient pediatrics, or what's?
Yes. Yeah. I divide I do at least 1 to 2 clinical weeks of inpatient a month, and then I do also usually around 6 clinics. Sorry, 1 to 2 inpatient clinical weeks, and then about 6 days worth of clinic
Sure.
days. So it's actually a sizable workload when you think about it, because that's effectively you're working two hospitals a week and then clinic on top of it. So I would say that I'm in the hospital probably a little bit more than a standard pediatric hospital is back in the States.
Sure. So tell me, Michael, what I think is interesting is you have this incredible ability to assimilate into any culture that you throw yourself into. But in many ways, pediatrics is unique because you have 2 patients. You have the child, and then more prominently, you have the parents. And so I'm curious what your experience has been like as an outsider to the island, as an outsider to a lot of the cultures, garnering the trust of parents, which is no small feat, even when you're dealing with your own population.
So I will say that it's almost like putting on a mask, and you know me well enough and my background and how varied a bit, how I think that I have many masks, and I have a mask for every single occasion.
Yeah.
And in this scenario, with at least the local population, the Carolinians and the Chamorros and the Filipinos, this island is incredibly Catholic. Not everyone goes to mass, but
Interesting.
it's very steeped in Catholic culture at the very least. And so everybody has an idea of what God is and what supreme being is, or how you might say it. And so there's that sense. And so I'll give you an example, like, of what I talked to one of my teenagers in the last clinic. I didn't, say Pope or the Virgin Mary, but I said that basically, they're more open to you if you talk their language, right? And so their language of spirituality. The kid was overweight. The kid, was smoking weed and doing the typical teenager things that are detrimental to him. And so I basically told him with his mom in the room, is that the good Lord gives you one car to drive your entire life. You're driving that car now, and at some point in time, you have to return that car to him, and you have to justify every single ding, bang, scratch that you garner away. Are these things that you can stand behind? And this is what the Creator or God would like, for you to live. And I want you to, when you leave this clinic, no matter what I say, what I do, I want you to understand that you are given this one car by your boss, and you have to return it to them. Live your life like that. And so talking like that, I think opens up, a lot of patient rep between me and the local Chamorro population.
Interesting.
Other times, you have to step in as a Western medicine doctor and tell people the way it is. Like, surprisingly enough, we actually have a pretty significant size Bengali population here in Saipan as well. They came over to work in the garment industries, and they just never left. They are very Muslim, and part of the Muslim code of ethics is that I believe that they basically are not allowed to do anything that might cause harm to a patient, right? Or what they perceive to be a harm to the patient. The kid I was taking care of was effectively brain dead because he was anoxic for 20 minutes. And the family did not have it in them to withdraw care. And effectively, I had to step in and say, we understand what you're doing. There's absolutely no rush in this. But at any point in time, if you want me to take that responsibility of taking care of your child away from you, and letting me make the decisions for you, no matter how difficult it is, I'm more happy to do it. And whatever happens, we'll let it be to Allah, right? And so they were receptive to that. We finally were able to give this child a peaceful passing. And so, being able to talk culturally, being sensitive to where people are coming from, knowing what their habits are, why their ethics are the way they are, helps you immensely, deliver care, whatever form it may look like. And I try to do that in the Deep South. I try to do that in Philadelphia with mixed success, but I'm certainly trying to do that here.
Yeah. So tell me, Michael, you have also worked in refugee camps at our southern border.
Yeah.
Tell me how is this similar to that?
Well, the refugee camps. So there were actually two types of refugee camps, right? There were Afghan refugee camps, which were genuine bona fide refugee camps, and then you had the unaccompanied minor refugee camps down in Texas for kids coming from El Salvador and Guatemala and whatever. It helps to speak Spanish in that scenario, right?
Yeah.
It also helps to talk about things that you would know that as a El Salvadorian kid would appreciate, right? And so pupusas, El Salvadorian football, basic things like that, and they'll open up to you if you have even a little bit attempt to learn a Spanish language, to be friends with them. That at least in teenagers opens the whole door in that type of scenario. With the Afghans, they were a little bit more reserved. Obviously, they had just been through a very traumatic thing. Family members had died, and and they had no idea what the future looks like. And so, again, learning a little bit of language helps a lot. Greetings, thank you, colors, numbers, those type of things. If you even attempted those things, that opens the door of things. And also cultural things, like the way you say thanks or greet someone with respect in Afghanistan is that you put your hand on your chest like this, and then you just kind of like that. And so I did that a lot when I greet the family's patients, and then I tell them to sit down in Dari or Pashto. And so those things break down barriers. And also just in kids in general, everybody likes chocolates.
Yeah.
Maybe not diabetics, but everybody for the most part like chocolate. And
Yeah.
so you know, if nothing else, Snickers and chocolates.
Absolutely. So when did you remind me when you worked in refugee camps? This was
After
before
fellowship,
Saipan, after fellowship, before Philadelphia
Chop. Yeah.
and Saipan.
Yeah. So that was what years was that? So I started working when Afghanistan fell. That was August 2021. And then I worked all the way to the was it the following year? Must be the following year. Yeah, until I started CHOP in 2022, I believe. Does that track? That tracks. My
That's,
timeline's a little off.
that's probably, we were in Philadelphia for about a year.
Yeah. There you go. So yeah, so for about a year's worth of Afghan refugee work, and then a year's work of a year and a half work of Philadelphia.
So all those practice contexts are radically different from each other. Which ones have you enjoyed the most and why?
Honestly, the one I enjoyed the most was when the first Afghan contract, when I was working at the Dulles International Airport. I'm filtering them in. It was, first off, it was intense work. It was incredibly hard work. I was seeing 80 patients a day easy.
Yeah, tell me
Right?
more about that. So you're seeing refugees who have
Yeah,
flown to Dallas.
Dulles,
Oh,
sorry.
Dulles. Yeah.
Dulles, yeah, Dulles. Flown to Virginia. So they flown to Dulles, and this was at the initial, initial wave of refugees. So, it was chaotic. We were getting plane loads of people a day. Thousands of people were being processed through the Dulles Dulles Convention Center. And, for me, one aspect that was incredibly enjoyable for that, because I felt, poetically in a way, that I basically repaid my debt to this country, my family's debt to this country. Because it wasn't even, 35, 40 years ago that my family was in the exact same position that a lot of those kids were in, right?
Yeah.
And so from a poetic justice that, I was able to welcome the newest wave of refugees to America to start their life, right? And that could be some bridge of calm and a hope to them, even if it's no matter if it's just a a Tylenol dose, right? I wanted to be that person. I
Yeah.
wanted to provide a care to people who just lost everything, and they just are just grabbing for little things of some sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
And
Also,
so,
like your family escaping a horrible and brutal war.
yeah, exactly. And when the Vietnamese people first came into the States, there was, discussions as to how well we would integrate, and how many of us were Vietcong sympathizers and all that stuff, and that never was to be the case, right? I think obviously the Afghan situation is a little bit different, but a part of me also would like to advocate for them, and say that give them the benefit of the doubt, had firsthand experience, seeing how generous of a people they actually are, and how rich their culture is, and how each kid is going to has potential to enrich our society beyond the stereotype of a kebab shop, right?
Yeah.
And so making that contact, providing some small service to them, I think that was honestly the best part of it.
Hmm. And so, did you have an idea that this would be what you would do with your career? Is you would work in refugee health centers, or what then led you to Philadelphia then? Because
So
you describe this as bringing you an immense source of satisfaction,
yeah.
which I can
So
imagine.
I guess in order to understand my mindset, you have to understand a little bit of the background that I came out of, and you already know, but I guess the viewers don't. But I came out of a fairly difficult fellowship, right? My fellowship ultimately, I will preface that I say I cannot talk bad about a single provider in my own fellowship, but as a program, they effectively failed me, and they pulled the rug underneath of me, and without any clear place to land. And that type of treatment makes you doubt your own humanity in many senses, right? And not only that, I just fell off. Immediately after they pulled the rug on me, I fell off the mountain and had a prolonged, prolonged recovery period. That Afghan recovery and that Afghan job was the first job I was able to get after I was able to basically be cleared by my doctor to lift up something more than 10 pounds. And so coming in with that mindset of I'm honestly not good enough to be a doctor. My fellowship didn't see anything, worthwhile to keep me. They treated me so poorly. They treated my life as something as something that they set aside in a rubbish bin with so little regard to my future, how much I sacrificed to get here. And then one thing that that job with the Afghan refugees taught me was no, that's not true. You are a pediatrician. Your first love was pediatrics. You love children. You are the advocate. You saved at least one or a couple lives, and at the refugee camp. The first 2 weeks that you were there, you are worth your training, and you're probably not necessarily in the right spot for the personality that you are. And that camp, gave that back to me, and me working again with refugee camps also slowly, integrated me back into being a healthcare provider with some degree of confidence. And then came CHOP, and CHOP was like one giant fire hose of madness, and I handled it like a champ. But boy, howdy, I was tired.
Yeah, it's a wild place. But I think you raised a very good point. You suffered, a very severe concussion, and amazingly, in medicine can be one of the least forgiving places when it comes to the health and safety of their own people. So I think most people would just assume that more allowances would be made for people who themselves get injured in their training. But the truth is that it can be quite bleak, and the level of support is just not there.
Yeah, well, just to clarify, they basically failed me after before I got the concussion. The concussion was my friend taking me on a cheer-up trip that did not go so well.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But regardless, though, your point still stands, is that particularly in my case, I gave up 3 years of my life in fellowship, and they did not extend the courtesy to me to notify me of their intentions in a timely manner. And when they did notify to me, it was too late for me to do anything. And they basically left me not only without a fellowship position to fall back on, but also no job, because it was so late. So late in the process, I had nothing to, I couldn't interview. The soonest I could start a job would be, another month and a half. So if I was in financial straits, if I was, living from paycheck to paycheck, then I would have been in incredible trouble. And and I think the program to some degree justified what they did, because I was responsible in my own life, and that is not okay. And that's where I would cut the line. Otherwise, everything great, aside from falling off the mountain.
Yeah,
that I don't remember, but I had a good time.
but it's funny how you ended up in a career path that I think that is much more fulfilling for you than I think the standard path for you was playing out to would have been. Yeah. I think what you have ended up doing since having made that transition has been far more rich and stimulating for you than what you had probably anticipated.
Oh yeah, this whole path, as meandering as it has been in many regards an incredible blessing, right? I've met so many interesting people. I met and got to know a culture that we've all had biases from based on the news. I've got to see the very real problem of the border, but also the humanity as well on the border. I've had a life, and if I had just gone straight to fellowship and got a standard 9 to 8 p.m. at some cardiology office in Roanoke, Virginia, that would have been the end of my life. I wouldn't have been able to have met so many interesting, intriguing people like yourself. And so I thought about this yesterday to a large degree, because it was Chinese New Year. It's Sunday now, but it was Saturday yesterday in Saipan. It was Chinese New Year. It's the year of the dragon. It's my year. This is my zodiac sign. So it's from a Vietnamese culture standpoint, it's a pretty significant, momentous year for me.
Yeah.
There's a belief that if you are born a dragon, you are destined for either one of two things: either incredible, great success, or be a big fat failure flop, effectively.
Really?
Yeah, that's the general stereotype. You know, you either succeed wildly or you fail miserably. And usually the general gestalt is that everyone succeeds. But I had to do some thinking yesterday when I was doing when I was saying my rosary up on the mountain, right? And you say I had to reflect on my life and say, you know, am I a failure, right? And I had to think, by all accounts, me 7, 8 years ago, I'm a failure, right? I didn't achieve my dreams. My social life is not exactly where I need to be, wanted to be. You know, my personal life is probably a dumpster fire. But but stepping back and looking about who I was when I was a child, I'm first off, I am in a beautiful, far-flung, underserved land.
Yeah.
I'm standing on my own 2 feet and I'm helping children. That's the reason why I decided to go to medicine. So
Yeah.
in that regard, I'm not a failure, but it is, you know, we all have to, you know, come to those, you know, it's a wild path to get here, and I'm glad I've experienced it. But, you know, as with anything that you know, it's like the yin and yang, you cannot know pleasure without knowing some sort of misery.
Exactly.
And my conventional path, as miserable as it was, has made this moment, you know, and this time, even better. It tastes sweet. It's almost diabetic. It's great.
But I think it's, your point is so poignant, because you know the prescribed path in medicine can rob you very quickly of all the joys that being a doctor can bring. So the endless chase of accolades and just everything that comes along with a career in academic medicine can actually push you further and further away from the sort of patient care that I think most people still, if you went into medicine for the right reason, most people still find immensely gratifying and justifies, you know, sacrificing your 20s for.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
I agree. This is worth the sacrifice. It's just what a sacrifice to make, you know?
what a journey to get there.
What a journey to get there. Oh my gosh, it's been amazing.
Yeah. What do you think, looking back, you know, if you wouldn't have traded any of these experiences in hindsight, but what would you have done differently in your own education with the wisdom that you have now, looking back on, reflecting on your own training, if anything differently?
I don't know if I would have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think every step that I took, no matter, you know, how constructive or destructive it was, built me to take this job I'm doing now. And I think, you know, more than anything, you know, for example, my background is cardiology. I'm effectively this island's cardiologist now, right? Any
Yeah.
kid with a weird rhythm issue, I can read their EKGs, even
Yeah.
though they're not my patient. That's me.
Yeah.
I listen to every single murmur. When there's a kid in the nursery with a murmur, then the echosonographer is not here, I will get the ultrasound myself and do a quick point of care ultrasound just to make sure all the chambers are there. And so, and so, and so, I would not have changed a single thing, but I think I would have been a little bit more, at least for my own personal satisfaction. I would have fought harder to advocate for myself during fellowship than what I've done. That's just more out of a pride issue at this point in time. I wouldn't change this job. I wouldn't, you know, change my experiences and you know how many valuable relationships I built over years just simply by, you know, by the happenstance of me falling out of cardiology.
Yeah.
But for my own sense of pride, I should have fought harder for myself, and that's something about medicine that particularly some of us who aren't in the surgical subspecialties, you know, you guys learn very early on that you have to speak out for yourself and you have to advocate for yourself, because if not, they'll kick you around. I'm a gentle soul, and I was not expecting that degree of not necessarily animosity, but that degree of malignancy, whether it was intentional or unintentional. And I think in this scenario, it was unintentional malignancy. Um, you just have to fight for yourself, and that's something I would say for me, for you, for everyone else who is interested in medicine, is fight for yourself, because at the end of the day, you are the one that has to listen to your own voice when you go lay down in bed at night, and that's basically it.
Yeah. Having now seen a different culture of medicine abroad, Michael, what do you think we could be doing differently in the United States to nurture young physicians?
Young physicians. First off, I think that
And I want to be clear, I don't mean like hand holding or coddling or anything like that.
not at
I
all,
mean,
not at all.
yeah,
I'm trying to think about how to put this eloquently. Physicians should recognize that they are physicians, first off, right? You know, you take a huge responsibility. No matter what the culture says to you, you ultimately the responsibility is yours at the end of the day. Having said that, you know, there's a very fine balance between, being humble and being patriarchal, right? You don't want yourself to be denigrated by the patients and nurse practitioners, the RTs, right? You should have that sense of pride. You should have that capacity to inspire confidence. But at the same time, you have to make sure that your ears are open, right? And that you're listening to the patient, your staff, and that you're being timely about things. Nothing inspires more better relationship dynamics with your nursing staff or your family dynamics is being able to communicate.
Mm.
And so that I think is kind of a lost art to some degree. Also, another dying art, the physical exam, way underrated.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Just
right.
because it has a murmur doesn't mean it needs an echo. Just listen.
Yeah.
Because here on the island, you don't have that luxury. So if you're in a pinch, remember, if it worked in 1990 to a large degree, before we had portable echocardiograms, it should be able to work now. And so being able to recognize what a physical exam and a normal physical exam looks like, I think is incredibly important. I'm not the best at that. I only am really good at one part of the physical exam. Although to my credit, I found a baby with one ball and a baby without a butthole. So on me.
Well, I mean, I think that's you're a product of your training. And the truth is, in the US, we have such ready access to advanced imaging. So there's a physical exam is de-emphasized in a lot of medical schools. So it's not just you, it's all American trainees.
Yeah. But then again, let's just say in an environment, I'm not expecting it, God forbid, but it's already happened to me twice on a plane already. If someone gets sick on the airplane, right? All you have is a stethoscope and you're on your own hands. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You need to make that decision to see whether that kid or that full-grown ass adult who ate bad sushi the night before should be able to handle what they got, or does the pilot need to make a emergency landing and dump gasoline, right? And so all these things are important.
Yeah. So is there a medical school on the island?
No, I think there's barely even a college.
Okay. So
Yeah, there's nothing here.
all trainees have to be imported.
All trainings have to be important. The one local doctor that I know here went off island, went to Hawaii for her medical school, and then went to California, San Diego for her residency, and then she came back here. There is such a deficit in education here. It's pretty remarkable. We talk about how schools in the States are underfunded and don't prepare children here. But I'm looking at the education curriculum here, and I'm just looking and saying, oh my gosh, I feel like, this is not great at all. And so I think, maybe in some sense, maybe there's not a need to, because the island life, people here are so chill and there's not a great need. But I think it helps to have medical providers or people of some standing coming from your own community, because who better to treat you than people who are willing to stay with you, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a temporary worker, another year, 2 years, whatever it is, however long I stay here, I'm going back to the mainland. But truly, for continuity's sake, for better care, and for the sake of the community, you really need to have homegrown physicians. That's something that they emphasize in Georgia. That's something that they should emphasize here. And unfortunately, I don't think the resources are here to even do that.
What are the major local industries, or like what do people do there for employment? Tourism, is tourism big there?
Tourism, I think, is probably the biggest thing. There's I feel, unfortunately, since COVID, the tourism industry has taken a huge hit and hasn't quite recovered yet. And if you walk down Main Street, you see shuttered businesses like crazy. It's not recovered. And also, when you think about from a international relationship standpoint, the previous tourists that made the bulk of the money that was coming into Saipan were actually Chinese mainlanders.
Mm.
And since COVID, because of first off China's own dumb policies with visas and international traveling, second, the international tensions between our country and theirs, there's been less travel from the mainland to here. So that industry has dried up, and so you'll see car rental dealerships that are shuttered up, restaurants that are shuttered up, gift stores that are shuttered up. You'll see all these luxury brand stores that are just there for show because no one's buying anything. And so I think objectively, the thing that's keeping the the biggest industry, like honestly, the biggest industry on this island is the hospital. It's probably employing most people with a regular paycheck here. But the problem is there's no qualified locals to work as nurses or physicians. So they hire outside contractors like Filipinos and doctors from the mainland. And so this is they're lucky that here in Saipan they can get away with very little, because unfortunately there's not a whole lot of money here, and there's poverty, I think, is a very real thing, and this is why tuberculosis and rheumatic fever is a real thing here, is because of that poverty level.
I didn't realize it was that dire.
I mean, it's not dark, it's actually pretty sunny, but it's sunny.
Dire.
But the money, the deficit of money here is definitely real. People don't have the capacity to earn a living if they want to, because they're not qualified to do, for the most part. You'll have mechanics and stuff like that on the job training, but there's no colleges on this island. There's a college in Guam, but there's no colleges, and there's no college here. And what degree you can get in Guam is like nursing, and so there's not a whole lot of opportunity here. But fortunately, nobody will starve here. There are coconuts everywhere. I've eaten so many coconuts.
Do coconuts have a lot of
in my
vitamins?
refrigerator right now.
They have a lot of vitamins. They're nutritionally dense.
Yeah.
They do?
Yeah, they're great. Fantastic. Love coconuts. #1 fan. And they're free. You just have to climb a tree or get a stick and whack at them until they fall off.
Yeah, which is something you amazingly have not yet mastered.
No, I need to.
You need
Give
to.
me 2 months.
So tell me, Michael, what is you're ultimately going to return to the mainland, and then you will have the pleasure and challenge of reintegrating into mainland American medical healthcare. How do you imagine you are going to do that? Because now you have practiced medicine in some very unique and challenging and very stimulating scenarios where all the autonomy falls on you, and you're doing everything from lumbar punctures to pediatric cardiology, and then you will be forced back into a very siloed system of healthcare. So what are some of your thoughts?
It's going to be messy.
Yeah.
Anything that I'm going to do is going to be messy. There's going to be mistakes made along the way. I'm going to have to apologize for things I didn't realize, and you know what, people will get over it, because it's at the end of the day, it's a job and you have to just do it. And you already know where my next stop is probably going to be. It gives me highs just thinking about it.
Yeah.
But it needs to be done. And so, good Lord willing, the creek don't rise, I'll still be employed by the end of 5 years.
Yeah. Do you think you would go back into academia, or you'll stay in a community?
Never.
Never.
I will, the moment I decided to walk away from my cardiology ambitions, that's the last time I decided to do, I wanted to do, deal with academic medicine. Not because I don't appreciate it, because it's a very important job, and you need absolutely those brilliant people to train the next generation of minds. But academic medicine for me, particularly with my fellowship, personified everything that's wrong with medical training. And I don't want to be part of that system. Not only that, there's something there's something about being able to practice full breadth pediatrics, not just to be a one-trick pony. But also from a more pragmatic standpoint, for me to go back to academic medicine would imply that I would go back to fellowship, and I would sooner eat my kidney.
Yeah.
If you get my drift.
I get your drift. Okay, so you'll go back to a big city and you'll work in a community hospital.
Yeah. Yeah. Not to mention, I'm pretty sure nobody will hire me as academic medicine. I'm not an academic type. I'm not an intellectual in that sense. I can't write papers. I have too much ADD. Get me to work. I'll work until my legs fall off. That'll be great. But I am not. I'm not someone that can sit for 5 hours discussing the benefits of post steroids versus
Yeah.
versus steroid-free treatment. Just give me the recommendations and call it a day. I don't care. Do the study, call it a day. It's fun.
Yeah. I think there's more people than you would think who feel that way, Michael. But
oh no, there's more of it, and unfortunately, the AMA does not represent the vast majority of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever think you would return to a rural environment to practice medicine ultimately, like Macon, Georgia, or something like that?
Yes, because living in the city gives me ulcers.
You're not a city person, are you?
No, I'm not. I love Philadelphia. It was so interesting. Loved having you guys around. Not sure how I feel about the poop on the streets.
Yeah,
or the heroin needles on or the fentanyl needles on the subway.
Yeah. Philadelphia has its fair share of problems.
Fair share of problems, but boy, howdy, what a city. I love it. I still have a very soft spot for Philadelphia. And it's not because I just got shanked there.
What are you looking forward to in the future?
What I look forward to in the future. This is going to sound morbid, honestly, but honestly, the thing I look forward to the most, honestly, is dying. It's no secret that I'm very Catholic, right? And I think my life has been such an adventure with unexpected turns. And to be honest, I got a couple more jokers on my deck than the standard deck should have. And so when I die and I get the opportunity to talk to God and tell him, this is the table that you dealt me and hand you dealt me. This is what I dealt with. This is what I did with it. What do you think of it? And he'll tell me what I think about it. And I say, great, I have questions for you.
That is the most Michael Pham answer to that question I could have anticipated.
Yeah.
I think you will have many more years.
Yeah. Well, in that case, Popeye's fried chicken, whenever I see it next. I'm looking forward to that.
They don't have Popeyes on the island? They don't have a Popeyes equivalent on the island?
No, we don't. They don't. They have one McDonald's, and I only got the fry there. And then what else junk do they have? They have one hamburger place. They have a bunch of Filipino food, which is basically Vietnamese food but less fancy. And then there's a couple Thai places, but I can do berry curries at home. And it's just like, okay, fine. The food scene here, just want anything tuna. So much tuna. I can eat so much tuna. You want tuna? Come over here. I'll catch you a tuna. It'll be great. We'll have so much.
You get a lot of seafood.
They have a lot of seafood, and it's cheap. It's cheaper to eat fish here than it is to eat beef in many regards. I can buy a whole tuna for $4 a pound, from the fishmonger versus, some really, really bad low quality beef that they freeze dried for like 6 months in the tanker getting over here. So yeah, fish, cheap, number one.
What does your family think about you living out in the middle of nowhere right now?
I think a couple school of thoughts about that. I think my dad saw how much mainstream medicine had hurt me effectively, and it has caused me a lot of degree of disappointment. And he's basically advocated for me to do something for myself. And so going on an adventure, he was all about. If he was young and didn't have family, he would totally do something like this as well. So he and I are on the same frequency with that standpoint. My mom cried for 1 week straight. I was like, I'm not dead. You can still FaceTime me. You didn't even visit me in Philadelphia.
Yeah, moms are different.
Yeah, it's like, you dropped me off in Philadelphia, and then you said, good luck, I'm never coming back. And then I never saw you again. In some sense, you're actually closer to me in Saipan because you actually want to visit me now.
Yeah.
And you're going to visit me in August. And so I said, okay, well, drama queen, that's fine. That can be your little thing.
They're coming out to Saipan in August?
They're coming out to Saipan in August, yeah.
Oh, wow. It's a long trip.
I can't wait until my dad complains about, the gas prices when he gets here. It's gonna be great.
That's incredible, Michael. Well, you're going to have many, many more years ahead of you before you have that conversation with God. So
Yeah.
I encourage you to think about what you will do when you come back, anticipating that you will have decades before those final moments.
Well, the long and short of this is, when I go back to the States, I look forward to reconnecting to people I left behind and strengthening the relationship I have already.
Yeah.
And that's the long and short of it. But we'll see what comes of it. Good Lord, when the creek don't rise, nothing happens between here and there. I might get hit by a tsunami. You never know.
Well, I'm just curious. You are someone who constantly needs to be engaged doing interesting things. I worry and think about how you can keep that alive practicing medicine in the United States.
Oh, it might die. It might die. But
Yeah.
good news is, nothing in your blueprint of life says that you're stuck to one position, right? And one thing that this whole experience has taught me is that, you're not necessarily alone in all of this. And, where conventionality fails, you can always, drunk call somebody and talk about and talk about your dreams, right? And I have a couple of dreams, and I look forward to accessing them again. Once I get back into normal life, and
Yeah.
and we'll see what that goes. And life doesn't have to be boring unless you let it be boring. You can always do something to spice it up. Add a little chili powder. It'll be
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. How do you think you will be changed by the time you come back to the US?
Well, my mom says I look Cambodian now because I'm darker than ever. That's her soft racism on her part. But uh, besides from the skin pigment issue, I think this time apart is going to do one of two things. It's going to make me love the people I left behind even more, or sift them out of my life effectively, right? Because just by default, because I'm not with them. I'm not making the effort to contact with them, because it's not easy necessarily to maintain relationships across the Pacific, right? And so, when I do so, it's because I care about the person deeply and I want to maintain that relationship. And if I don't, it means because it's just life. People grow apart, and being this distance of far away just accelerates those things.
Mm.
I think also, coming back to the States, it gives you a different perspective as to what's important in life, right? Me taking this leap of faith far away from everything I know took some gumption. Took some gumption, and now that I've made this leap once, I think I can probably do it again. And so I feel like I think that degree that just expands my flexibility. So if I find myself in a position I don't like, back in the States, I'll just be like Cartman from South Park and say, "Screw you guys, I'm going home," and then I'll just go home and do whatever.
I've never seen South Park, but
you should. It's terrible, but I love it. But I think this will give me a little bit more mental flexibility, because I have already done the most. In my mind, the most difficult thing I had to do, and declare my old dream of going to cardiology effectively dead. And once you give that up, you open your books to all sorts of things, and you're not just writing about hearts anymore. You're writing about kidneys. You're writing about the stomach. You're writing about the flu. You're writing about all sorts of things, and you're also writing about the heart. But you should give yourself that flexibility. And at some point in time, if I say, medicine is not not for me, it's hurting me, I will find something. I don't know what it is. I will find something, and hopefully I don't have to go to North Philly to find it.
You'll probably start a farm somewhere.
I'll probably start a farm somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm starting a farm now. I have like 18 tomato plants on my porch right now.
Yeah, I think the experience that you have of being a generalist where you are, it's an invaluable experience, and I am somewhat envious in a good way, because you're a dear friend of you having that experience. I think.
Yeah. But remember, Krista, you can too be a generalist. You're in general surgery. That's as general as they come.
Yeah. No, that's right.
And we need surgeons in Saipan.
Do you really?
They really do. They're always hiring because they have such a hard time keeping them here.
Because they're on call constantly.
Well, not necessarily on call, but the reality is that when you move to Saipan, you're taking a pay cut. There's no end for months. And it's not necessarily the easiest place to access, the Popeye's fried chicken, for example. This is effectively, a middle of nowhere. And so for other physicians who aren't sure what they want to do, consider going to scenic Saipan. It has tropical weather. It has coconuts. It has an incredible rate of childhood obesity. Come, treat the people that you love and be in tropical paradise. Yeah, that's my today.
Well, this is they can use this video as part of their recruitment campaign. I think.
Oh, they will get so many people off.
Hold it very well, my friend. But no, I think it's a nice reflection on the dying art of the doctor who could do everything.
Yeah.
I think that doesn't really exist anymore. It was definitely a romanticized idea that I had going into general surgery. What drew me to the specialty is the idea of taking care of the whole patient. And it just doesn't exist anymore for many reasons that are good and bad. But I'm very envious of you having this experience. You're frozen in time medicine.
Yeah, remember, Chris, it doesn't have to be envious. You could join me anytime you want. I have a spare room. You can stay here for as long as you want. I don't care.
I know. It's very tempting.
Maybe you can convince your program to let you do a rotation here. That's what ER doctors do here. We have a couple ER residents rotating through from San Diego. Just
really?
think about it. You never know.
Yeah, it's you'd be surprised at how much you feel. You feel like bread and butter general surgery just becomes, interestingly enough, the thing that you feel the least comfortable with after coming through an academic training program. So,
oh no, I get it. It totally makes sense. General pediatrics, when I first started at backup, it scared the hell out of me because I don't know.
Yeah.
Gallbladder, you have 3 of those, right?
Exactly. So I think you can make a strong case to send, residents from academic centers to more community programs because you just don't get that exposure.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right, Michael. Well, in the spirit of not taking that much of your Sunday because of the time difference, I thought I would close by just asking you what do you anticipate being your fondest memories of that time, of your time on that island?
It's only been a month in.
I know.
I fondest time on this island.
Okay, what do you anticipate?
I'll give you this because this is something I deeply missed in Philadelphia, and I didn't have the opportunity to do a whole lot of it while I was in my transition period. The stars, it's always humbling to me when you lay on the ground on your back and look up against the black blanket of the sky and see little specks of light that had traveled millions and millions of years to come to Earth. And it puts your life into perspective in the sense that, what I do on this Earth is effectively, in the big scheme of things, all my mistakes, all my shortcomings, it's inconsequential. And having that, that blanket of humility, that dark black, sparkly blanket of humility, just wrap around you, and give you that comfort that put you back in your spot in the universe. This is what I value in the island. In the sense, it gives me the motivation to keep on doing what I'm doing to the best of my ability and to live a life without any regrets. And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. And for you, I would also add leading a life of real integrity.
Yeah. Well, although I'm pretty sure when I was a kid, I was not the best kid.
No, but I'm saying that, one of the reasons I was looking so forward to talk to you, Michael, is you're someone who truly lives their values and you're brutally honest with yourself. You're brutally honest with the people around you. And that's hard to come by. So
yeah. Yeah, well, people call it brutally honest. Some people just call it not particularly tact. Some people just call it socially awkward. Some people just call it just autistic. Just ignore him.
I like the brutally honest.
Okay,
Brutal
sure.
honesty is something that I think all of your friends really cherish about you. But the hardest
Well,
thing is to be honest with yourself, and you are the one person I can think of who is unfailingly honest with themselves.
yeah, well, I appreciate that,
Yeah.
and for what it's worth, I return the compliment to you. You're so dang inquisitive, and you really do when you say something, you really intend to do it. This whole podcast thing, I've been talking about doing side hobbies for years. You're the only one of my friends who actually done something like this, and so to give yourself that forum to express your dreams like this is absolutely admirable. You make things happen, and
Thanks,
so this is
Michael.
one reason why I'm incredibly proud to call you my friend as well.
Thanks, buddy. I think I cannot imagine a better use of my time than, God willing, if I live to 80, going back and watching some of the conversations I've had with these people that I have been so blessed to cross paths with over my life. I think I can't imagine a more fun thing to do when I'm old and gray and full of sleep, will be to just count my blessings in the acquaintances and dear friends I've had over the years. So I was very excited to do this.
Oh, wow.
I'm very
I'm
happy
excited
that
to
our paths
I'm excited to look back through all the things that you've done so far because between Isha and Anna Maria and me and all the other extended friend group is going to be quite a collection.
It'll be quite a collection, isn't it? All right, my dear. I will let you go along with your day, run your errands, do your chores, and get ready for work tomorrow. But
Okay.
you take very good care of yourself.
Okay.
Everyone
Very
here
good.
loves and misses you.
You do so. And before you go, I want to say one thing.
Yeah.
In Vietnamese, it is Chinese New Year, so I gotta give you guys the proper greeting or wish. All
Oh,
right. Chúc mừng năm mới may mắn, hạnh phúc, vạn sự như ý và sức khỏe. Thì anh cũng chúc các bạn và các thân mến được được nhiều niềm vui cái năm tới nha. Okay, that's it. So
what
I
does
was just
that mean?
basically wishing you a happy new year, that may all your wishes come true, and that you may have all your dreams or many happy memories in the next coming year. So we'll call it a night. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Thank you so much, Michael. You're the best.
All right, you're the best
Get
dude.
some rest.
Ciao.
Bye.